Hello, I'm Nancy Briefs. I'm co-founder and CEO at AltrixBio. AltrixBio is working in one of the largest drug markets ever, and that is for treating obesity and type 2 diabetes. I want to share with you the story of our company. We were founded by a group out of Mass General Brigham and Harvard Medical School who had decided that they wanted to find a drug that could mimic gastric bypass surgery. In other words, could we reduce the weight and get people off of insulin and drugs if they have diabetes? And here tonight, we're going to talk to you about that development, which we call LUCI, for luminal coating of the intestine. It's a small molecule, it's a daily drug, and we are at the point now we're ready to take the drug to humans. So let's talk about the market for obesity and type 2 diabetes. You may know that over 100 million Americans are either overweight or obese, and 70% of them have type 2 diabetes. So these chronic conditions go hand in hand. If you've picked up a newspaper lately in the US, you've seen the great enthusiasm for a new class of drugs called the G drugs, the GLPs and the GIPs. And these drugs last year alone had $50 billion in revenue. And they have been a life changer for many patients, for both those who have type 2 diabetes and want to control their A1C, and those that want to lose weight. And one of the things that is important here is to think about what is it these patients that are taking these GLP-1s, what does it do for them, and what is the drug itself? The market is predicted to be over $100 billion by the end of this decade, which far exceeds any drug market to date. And these drugs are being used for both, as we said, diabetes and obesity, but have great promise for other cardiometabolic diseases, such as NAFLD and NASH, and things like sleep apnea and other indications. So the major pharmaceutical companies right now are leading the market in these drugs, and they're looking for other alternatives as well. So you may ask yourself, for these patients that are taking the GLP or G drugs, how many of them continue after the first year? And you'll be surprised to learn that for patients with type 2 diabetes, 45% of them discontinue the drug in the first year. And if you're taking it for obesity, that number is even higher at 65%. And these are over multiple clinical trials in over 100,000 patients. So why are patients coming off of the drugs? The number one reason is adverse side effects. The drugs can cause a lot of nausea, gastric upset, vomiting, and it's very challenging to titrate the dosage of these drugs. The second reason is related to cost and availability. Most patients that are taking it for obesity do not have insurance coverage for the drug, although many insurance companies now are starting to reimburse for it. And the third is that they don't see the perceived efficacy that they desire. So what do we do for these patients? What happens when they come off of these drugs? Well, the unfortunate thing is that the patients regain all of the weight they've lost. And if you're taking it for diabetes, you lose control of your A1C. So what is the solution? We believe that we have a drug, which we call LUCI, for luminal coating of the intestine, that can help these patients that discontinue the GLP-1s. And why do we think that? Well, the first is LUCI is from a drug, sucralfate, that's been reformulated. That drug has been commercially available for ulcers for almost 40 years. And we know that it's one of the safest drugs in the market. So we know that safety is a key here. The second issue is affordability. Well, because it's a drug that has a generic compound drug product, we can actually manufacture this small molecule at scale and be able to sell it at a price that we think every consumer in the US and the world will be able to afford. We know it's well tolerated from lots of data. It'll be oral. It actually, when you take the drug before a meal, it basically creates a barrier in your stomach, from your stomach down to your small intestine, and moves the food and nutrition down further in your gut. This mimics the same effect as bariatric surgery, and our preclinical studies have shown that it has similar both weight loss and glucose control as the GLP-1s. We have patents on this formula that still have 22 years, and in meetings with FDA, they've said we could be accelerated to market. We think we can be commercial within 3 years. So how do we know that Lucy can work? Well, a lot of the science comes out of our hometown, Boston, where we did both acute and chronic animal studies. And what we discovered is that by moving the nutritional absorption further down the gut, that we can both reduce weight and improve glucose control. And how does that mimic what happens in bariatric surgery? We know that patients that have bariatric surgery that are overweight or obese and have type 2 diabetes come off all their diabetes medications in the hospital, including insulin. And 80% of them stay off their diabetes medications at 5 years. So by mimicking that same mechanism of action, we think Lucy can be a very powerful drug for patients that cannot stay on the G drugs. We, as we said, have met with FDA, and we have accelerated pathway. And you may say, what does that mean? Well, instead of a typical drug, which will take 7 to 10 years to get commercial and hundreds of millions of dollars of development, we will not have to do a phase 3 study because we know our drug is safe. Our phase 1 will actually be done in patients with disease, which is why we can get through the FDA, we think, in 3 to 4 years. So at the end of this, you might say, well, you're going to build this great drug. What are you going to do with it? We don't intend to build another big pharma company. We think that in talks with the strategics, they're all looking for 3 things. They're looking for different delivery mechanisms that are differentiated. Lucy, of course, can be oral. A capsule can be taken 15 minutes before a meal, so very convenient. They're looking for scale. Scale, because it's a small molecule drug, means it can be easily developed. And they're looking for different therapies that can be either co-prescribed at the same time or for new indications. So we think that there's a reasonable chance that Lucy will become a complement to other portfolios of the big pharmas. So our ask, we're raising a $10 million Series A, which will allow us to complete our phase 1 studies of approximately 100 patients. The pre-money on the equity is $36 million. We have $6 million committed, and we're looking for another $3.5 to $4 million. And why an investment in AltrixBio? Well, we have what we believe is a significantly de-risked drug. 48% of all drugs fail because of safety. We know this drug is safe. It has 40 years of safety data. We also know that it's scalable. It's a small molecule. We're able to make this drug. We've got very strong preclinical science that supports our mechanism of action. And we've got an experienced team who launched one of the first GLP-1s. So we appreciate your interest. And if you're interested in being part of our team, we like to say that we think this could be a 25x because we think the return here could be significant. Thank you.